Bienvenue dans la Matrescence, vous écoutez l'épisode 69 de la saison 1 et le dernier de l'année 2020. Alors je vous souhaite une excellente année 2021, on en a besoin. Merci d'être toujours plus nombreux, nombreuses et aussi présentes pour soutenir ce podcast. Bonjour à tous et bonjour à toutes. La matrescence, c'est la contraction des mots maternité et adolescence pour expliquer la naissance d'une mère. Et si vous voulez en savoir plus, il suffit d'écouter le premier épisode. Dans ce podcast, on parle du postpartum, du 4e trimestre, de la joie d'être parent, mais de ses difficultés aussi. Bref, on parle de la vie. La matrescence met en avant des femmes et des hommes qui racontent, expliquent et donnent une autre définition à la parentalité. Je suis Clémentine Sarlat, la créatrice de ce podcast. Je suis journaliste de formation dans le sport, à la télé, rien à voir. Mais je suis aussi professeure diplômée de yoga pré et postnatal. Et puis surtout, je suis maman de 2 petites filles, dont une qui s'appelle Jasmine et qui est née en septembre 2020. Et d'une autre petite fille de 3 ans.
Je m'appelle Ella. Bienvenue de la matrescence.
La matrescence transforme la vie des mères, des pères, mais surtout des familles dans leur ensemble, alors parlons-en. Ici, pas de tabou, je vous propose une conversation intime, remplie d'émotions et d'informations. Si vous aimez ce podcast, n'hésitez pas à vous abonner, à laisser un commentaire et le must à mettre 5 étoiles. Et puis surtout, partagez sur les réseaux sociaux. J'ai lancé mon site web, vous pouvez aller y faire un tour pour trouver des épisodes que vous n'avez jamais écoutés. Tout y est, clémentinesarlat.com. Pour le dernier épisode de l'année, j'ai choisi d'interviewer la personne qui a été la lumière dans ma maternité, celle qui a planté des graines en moi sans même le savoir. Cet épisode est en anglais parce que c'est Nan, ma sœur américaine, qui répond. Nan, je l'ai rencontrée il y a 15 ans quand je suis arrivée dans le Minnesota pour faire ma terminale. Alors en fait, je vous explique, j'ai vécu dans une famille américaine en échange et Nan est la femme de mon frère américain Steele. J'espère que vous suivez. En gros, je vivais dans une famille où il y avait 3 enfants, donc mes 2 grands frères, Shane et Steele, et ma petite sœur américaine, Cody. Et Nan est la femme de Steele, c'est donc en gros ma belle-sœur américaine pour faire plus court. J'ai énormément partagé de choses avec elle, même avec 8000 km de distance tout au long de ces 15 dernières années. J'ai été présente pour la demande en mariage, le mariage, pour le choix de sa robe, pour la naissance de son premier enfant et tout un tas d'événements très importants dans sa vie, fruit du hasard à chaque fois, mais un lien qui nous a gardé très très proche. Voilà, ce qui est sûr, c'est que ce podcast n'existerait pas sans elle, si elle n'avait pas fait partie de ma vie, parce que Nan a été mon pilier. Quand je suis devenue mère, c'est elle, par ses recommandations de lecture par exemple, qui m'a fait découvrir le mot matrescence et puis tellement plus. Il y a 7 ans, elle a choisi donc d'accoucher à la maison et depuis cette idée m'était restée dans la tête. Si vous avez écouté un peu d'autres épisodes dans mon podcast, vous savez que c'est grâce à elle que j'ai choisi d'accoucher à la maison. Et je suis très émue de vous faire partager cette conversation avec cette femme extraordinaire qui est mère de 2 petits garçons, Juna qui a 7 ans et Fields qui a 4 ans. Nan, elle est professeure de yoga, mais surtout elle a fondé il y a 17 ans Landscape Love, une entreprise de paysagisme qu'elle dirige avec son mari Steele, mon frère américain. Et si vous voulez comprendre un peu mieux, vous pouvez aller dans mes stories permanentes sur Instagram, j'y parle de ma famille un peu plus en détail. Je vous souhaite une très bonne écoute.
Hi Nan, thank you for being here with me. I don't think I would have ever imagined doing this with you one day.
Never.
But as I've explained it in French, you're the reason why this podcast kind of exists, because without you, I wouldn't have never heard about this word matrescence. So just thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You introduced me to the word, so.
Well, it's because you told me where to look at. So it felt like you were the one triggering everything. Thank you so much for that.
I'm honored. Thank you.
So my first question, and I don't even know the answer, is have you always wanted kids?
Yes, I have always wanted kids. I think since I have an incredible mother who was such a natural nurturer, and I think I always knew that I was going to want kids. It wasn't that I was like a great babysitter or that I'm necessarily the person that always kids gravitate towards, but I certainly have a strong nurturing quality in my life too. And there was no question that I wanted to have kids someday if it was possible. And meeting Steele, I knew, hey, this is the person that I'd love to be the father of my kids too.
I know you've waited a long time because you've known Steele for a long time before you guys became parents. Was it something you've talked about in the beginning with Steele, or did it happen that way?
That we waited, that we talked about
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Mhm.
I don't know if it was something that we explicitly talked about, but I think we both knew that we wanted to have kids, and there would be these different moments. Usually we'd be on some travel or trip and we would check in with each other like, do you feel ready? No, I don't feel ready. Do you feel ready? I feel ready. Do you feel ready? No, I don't feel ready. And I think Steele was ready before I was. But for me, I knew I was going to bear the burden of carrying the kid and, especially the initial labor of the first year and years. And that felt like a bigger investment on my end than his. So I felt like I really needed to be ready. And to be honest, it was one of those things where it went from like not ready to the next day clicking over to ready. And as you know, you can never be 100% ready. But in my heart, I was ready for whatever came my way. And I remember we were sitting on a trip and that's when it happened, where I was like, you ready? You ready? And then it was so fun to try and have kids.
It's the fun part, right?
It's so fun. And you think when you don't get pregnant that first month, you think, wait, so you're telling me this whole time I've tried not to get pregnant and now I'm not getting pregnant when I'm trying to get pregnant?
It's funny what you just said, though, because you already knew the burden would be on your shoulder before you had kids. That's something I had no idea before I became a mom.
I think
How did you know that?
I think witnessing friends who had kids, and because I waited a little longer, certainly didn't wait till I was that old, but since I waited a little longer, I saw other friends and just noticed that kind of invisible labor falls generally on the mother, and knowing if I wanted to nurse, that was going to be something solely I could do, that my body was going to be the one for that 10 months carrying the baby. I think I knew. But I will say I didn't know how much until I had a baby.
But still, you had a sense of that. I don't know. I feel it's pretty amazing to me, since I felt so blind before.
Yeah, I certainly had a sense of that. And I think it was just witnessing friends.
So a lot of people who listen to that podcast, they know I had a home birth thanks to you. That's for sure. But how come you started to think about that 7 years ago?
Yeah, I had never heard of home birth, never thought of home birth. And then I started teaching yoga maybe 10 or 11 years ago. And one of the studios that I started teaching yoga at here in Minneapolis, it focuses primarily on prenatal yoga. And it's run by this incredible woman named Sarah Longacre, who's also a doula. And her entire focus was about empowering women through the process of being pregnant and labor and postpartum. And it was the first time my eyes were open to natural childbirth, to really embracing that as a sacred period of life. I think prior to that, I had always just thought of like, oh yeah, a woman's pregnant, she has the baby, goes to the hospital, just like it is in every movie that you see, and you move on, rather than really how special and powerful that time can be. And the studio that she created is such a wise and wonderful, supportive community that links people together throughout that time too. And it was the first time I heard about home birth and was witness to other possibilities. And Sarah makes it very clear, however you want to choose to give birth, whether that's in the hospital, whether that's at home, whether it's in a birthing center, which are 3 kind of options here in the States, is entirely your choice. And as I kind of dug in, I think the second I got pregnant, or the second I saw the option of home birth, I thought, oh, that looks wonderful. Just being a person who I don't like hospitals. Honestly, the smell of a hospital makes me want to run out the front door the second I walk in. So that was the first thing I was like, oh, I don't have to go to a hospital. I don't have to smell that smell. Okay, I'll take any other option. But once I dug into it, I just got more and more intrigued by home birth and met a few people that had home births. But really what tipped it over was being pregnant. And then I shared with Steele, hey, I think I'd really love to have a home birth. And Steele had never really heard of home birth, certainly hadn't experienced that. And we watched Ricky Lake's movie, which is called The Business of Being Born, one morning. And we laid in bed and watched it. And I looked over and Steele was just weeping, crying, watching it. And it was that film that had him understand and see the power of home birth, and certainly emphasized that for me too. And from that point on, we both were like, we definitely want to do this if it's in the cards. And so that was how I got introduced to home birth and chose home birth.
And no regret.
No regret.
Because I remember it was, I had no idea what was going on for you at that time, to be honest. I was 25 and pretty selfish and no idea what birth meant. But I remember when you, the day after, you said it was so powerful but very long and hard. How do you remember that night?
The actual birth?
Yeah.
You know what? The way that I think of it is intense. Like there's nothing that is not intense about birth. It just ratchets everything up to level 10. And I remember it so fondly, though. It was a wild and wacky story because I was not at home. I was 3 hours away when my water broke and I went into labor. So I labored a lot in the car for 3 hours in order to get home and be in my safe space and sanctuary of our house and be able to have Emmy, our beloved midwife, with us. But I remember it so fondly. And honestly, pain is not the top part of the list, but intensity is, and empowerment is, and knowing that I could do it is the way that I remember it. And I sent you texts. Someone sent me a text when I told them that my water had broke, and all it said was, your body is made to do this. And that was really the guiding principle of that night as I was laboring with Juna. And to be honest, because it was early, he came earlier than I expected, the whole time I was in total disbelief. I was like, no, this isn't labor. This can't be happening. I'm not having a baby. No way. He's not supposed to come for another 2 or 4 weeks. So it wasn't until I remember getting home and puking and then being like, oh yeah, maybe this is what they call transition in labor. Oh, maybe this is actually happening. Oh yeah, there's the head. Okay, yep. I think I'm definitely having a baby.
It's funny because the day before you gave birth, we were together walking around the lake, and I couldn't even keep up with you. You had so much energy, and I was like, damn, is this really like this when you have a baby inside you? You have more energy. And now I know, no, it's just because it's you. Because for sure, the day before I gave birth, I was unable to do more than 2 feet and walk. And you, I don't know.
I may not have that many skills in life or talents, but fast walking is one of them.
Even 9 months pregnant.
9 months pregnant.
I can tell. Yeah. Did you have any knowledge about postpartum period and what to do? And because that's something that I will always remember is how Robin and and Cody. So these are the women of our family, were like taking care of you, your mom. And did you tell them to do stuff? Did you talk about postpartum plan? How was it for you?
Yes, I had no idea what postpartum looked like, besides, again, everything I'd kind of seen or been taught through media or culture, which is, oh my gosh, you have a baby, and the next day, if you're popped up and you're walking, then that's what you should be doing. And it wasn't until I was working with Emmy, our home birth midwife, who said, hey, I want to tell you my expectations for you for postpartum, which was such an incredible thing to have her say, here's what I expect of you. And she said, what I expect of you is to be in bed, skin to skin with your newborn baby for the first 7 to 10 days. And that means the only time you're not skin to skin with your baby is if you're taking a bath or a shower. And besides that, I would like you to set your family up with the expectation to provide meals, to be doing the cooking and cleaning. And it really helps if you can tell your family now what you envision your postpartum time to look like. And I was blown away. I thought, wait, what? Like, I'm not going to do anything for 7 to 10 days? That's not me. Like, I'm going to be out there walking the lake really fast with Clem. And so it was really shocking to me and kind of hard to swallow, actually. Like, really? I don't know about this. But we shared with our families, here's what we're thinking. We're going to be home. We'd love to have you come, but I'm not going to be going to something right away, and just really clearly laid it out. Not with it wasn't rigid. It just felt like, here's what we're up to. And we were really lucky because everyone in our family, everyone was so supportive of us having a home birth. There were no judgments or questions about it, which in hindsight feels really remarkable, because I know there's plenty of people that have judgments about home birth. And so that was kind of how I prepared for the postpartum time. But I'd say in the back of my head, I still thought, I don't know what she's talking about. Maybe I'll do that for 2 days. But once Juno was born, oh man, did I just embrace it. It felt so good, just giving myself permission to be still and quiet and let my body heal and be, soft and jiggly, and let my milk come in and feel all the hormones and the way that your body smells different after you've given birth. And and Steele too. He was skin to skin, and we were just home. And I have such fond memories of like you braiding my hair and checking in, and all these women in my life, and the home birth midwife coming by and checking in on Juna. Oh, it was just so lovely. Like, if I could go back and pause time, those 10 days were some of the most special in my life. And I don't even know, I was obviously in the postpartum haze or fog, but I didn't even realize how special it was. And I'm so grateful and thankful to Emmy and Claire for setting that expectation and being clear about it.
Well, that's something you clearly don't know, because I talked about it, but in French in this podcast. It's the image of you in bed with Steele next to you, and all this hormone. I could feel it. I could smell it, and the oxytocin going on. It's just something I still remember 7 years later, and for the rest of my life, I will have that image. And it made an impression on me, for me being a mom 5 years later. So I know you don't know about that, but it was just a very healthy expectation for me to see what you were doing. Because as you mentioned it, we're not prepared for that.
No.
We want to walk. We want to do stuff. We don't want to be in bed and be taken care of, which is fucked up, because we should be able to say it's fine and it's very healthy.
Right. Yes. Well, I hope it's a gift we get to continue to pass on to every woman. I feel like every woman in my life that has since had a baby, I've just tried to lovingly encourage to stay in bed, stay skin to skin, come take care of them, to do the dishes that are in the sink, drop a meal off, brush their hair, do those little things that feel tender and loving. And I hope we pass that forward.
I'm trying to do that here in France, so I'm sure you do that on your side for sure. Did you feel 7 years ago that you went through a kind of matrescence, like something completely changed in you when Juna was born?
Yes, I would say I don't think it was necessarily immediate. It had to sink in. I certainly did shift. And one thing I acutely remember about having Juna, and these are kind of concrete examples, but one time I was nursing him and I was in this hammock. It was a gorgeous scene. He was maybe 6 weeks old and we were in Mexico, and I had him in my arms nursing, and I looked down and his head was in my elbow, like the crook of my elbow. And I had this moment of thinking, oh my gosh, that's what elbows are made for. And it was just that was something like the shift of the relationship to my body. And, oh, maybe my elbow was made to cradle a baby and hold a baby, even though up until that point, I'd always thought of my elbow as the thing that helped me lift and carry and move and cook. And so the shift of, oh, a baby. And another thing I experienced after Juno was born was looking at my own baby. I would look out in the world, whether I was walking down the street or seeing someone on a corner or someone maybe who I didn't like that much. I would picture them as a baby and think, oh my gosh, they were a baby once who had so much possibility and potential in their life. And someone took care of them, whether they took care of them really well or poorly. Somehow they grew up. And that was like this heart expansion of compassion and empathy about bringing a child into this world. And then I think the identity shift happened like over certainly that first year. And I'd say I wrestled with some of the identity shift of trying to understand my new kind of roles and position and responsibilities. And especially as I kind of transitioned back to work, that's where I really wrestled with it. And, you've got your hormones raging at the same time as you're also trying to kind of, it feels like you create this cocoon in becoming a new mother and with your baby. And then you have to step out into the world, and they're hard. They're hard, like hard things to blend. And maybe that's the matrescence that felt challenging. And once I was able to figure out how to blend them, which is still a work in progress, blending the cocoon of my family and motherhood with kind of the external world. But once it was less kind of choppy and jagged and challenging, then it felt like I could land in my identity as like a human being in the world that also is a mom as a big part of it. And I don't know if that directly answers the question, but that it feels like it's been a process.
No, it does. It does. And do you feel that being an entrepreneur and having your own company made it easier or harder for you to be a parent?
Oh, some of both, right? Like it made it easier because for Juna's first 6 months of life and for Field's first at least 6 months of life, I brought him to work with me so much. They would lay on the floor kicking on a blanket, and I would nurse him at the office. And so I had that flexibility because I was the one in charge. But it was also challenging because I didn't have this clear boundary about here's when I'm at work and I'm only doing work, and here I just get to be home. This is the life of an entrepreneur anyways, is it all kind of blends. You're wearing all the hats at once. So it's easier because, if the kids are sick or someone needs to get picked up, I don't have to go to someone, get permission. I can just do it. But it's also challenging because, to be honest, like one big reason why Steele and I chose not to have a third child was we have a third kid and it's our business, and it takes so much tending to and nursing and nurturing, and that's our business. So I feel like we have 3 kids and they each demand a lot of attention and love.
I remember when you came to visit me 3 years ago in France, and I was just a new mom. And you mentioned that even for you being the boss of your company, you going back to work, you didn't know if you belonged to this place or trying to fit into this new world. Do you think it took you like a year, or how much time to feel like normal again in the workplace?
Yeah. You know what? It took longer than I expected, to be honest. That was, I think, the hardest transition was what I mentioned moments ago, the kind of blending of this like cocoon of my family with all of the everything I also need to like tend to out in the world. And I think by the time with Juna, it was definitely like at a year, I felt more like clear and confident, being able to do both. But it wasn't until about a year ago now, so when Fields was 3, Juna was 6, where I really felt like we came out of the woods a bit. Like, I can really give as much attention to all 3 of those kids, Juna, Fields, and work, as I want to. Whereas up until then, I felt like kind of everyone was missing something from me and I couldn't quite do enough. And it took until about a year ago until I felt really kind of confident in myself. And again, and I feel really good. And this past year has been a hard year. 2020 hasn't been easy for anyone. But wow, this past year and a half, as I sit and think about the reflection, is when maybe this is my matrescence, my true matrescence, is I'm able to be the human that I want to grow into being.
And you're 40.
40, yeah.
That's maybe also why.
I think you're right.
Just to be back at your postpartum period with Juna or Fields, did you at any time felt isolated or alone or like loneliness?
Yes. I remember, especially maybe not the first 10 days when everything is so new. I didn't feel the loneliness and people are stopping by and they're bringing meals and very connected. But I remember kind of that first 2 to 3 months, certainly feeling lonely. You just feel like disconnected. Like my sole focus is tending to this little new human, and yet the world is still going on out there. And I think I'm someone who's pretty engaged in the world and I like to be active. And so without that release, I felt isolated. And I'm so grateful for such great friends that send sweet texts. But this is kind of a desperate moment. But I remember just kind of being home and reading books or scrolling on Instagram. And you'd be on Instagram and thinking like, man, I've looked at everything. Can't someone post something new? Like just craving some hit of normalcy or what other people are up to. And yeah, I felt isolated. Yeah. And I'm going to also jump in. I also, especially during that time, trying to figure out, I think I felt isolated from my partner too. As wonderful as Steele is and was as a dad, I felt like I was the one doing a lot of it, and that felt isolating.
It's funny because it is my next question.
Bring it.
And I want to say that Steele is the sweetest guy I know, to be honest. I love him very much. But I know you guys, and I've talked to you about it, I had very different experience becoming parents. And I wonder why you think you guys had different experience, knowing that Steele is such a, I don't know how to describe him, but for a man, he's very intuitive and connected to emotion. And I don't know, I he's pretty amazing on that side, but still, you had a different experience.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should ask him the question, but we have talked about it. I think a couple things. One, I really feel like it was just not his domain. Like I had carried the babies, I was the one nursing, and I think it felt a little to him like, all right, this is going to be what another friend told him is, hey, it's very front loaded on the mom. And I think for Steele heard that and thought like, all right, yeah, like Nan will do the work for the first year and then I'll do what I need to do. And not to say he wasn't supportive and around, don't all want to paint him in a bad picture. But I really think it just felt like, all right, she's got it. And this is a dynamic in our relationship too, which is I am strong and confident, and he looks at me as someone who I got it. Like I'm going to be okay. If I'm injured or I'm sick, he doesn't nurse me. Like he thinks I've got it. And I think this was another time like Nan's got it. And that was true. And yet what I really needed in hindsight was so much more. I just needed more support and levity and attention put on me. And if we could go back, I would be more clear about what I needed. But I didn't know then what I needed. And it's so confusing and everything's new and everything's swirling and you're emotional. And now if I could sit in that same position, I would say, I know this sounds crazy. I need you to tell me that I'm beautiful every day. I need you to do even more dishes. I would love for you to be really clear about me taking more time. And I just needed to be taken care of, I think, more.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I feel like every new mom needs that.
Yeah.
But not every dad knows, or every second mom knows that the new mom needs that.
Right.
And do you feel like for Fields it was different? Were you able to say out loud what you needed?
I think it was different for Fields. Yes. And I think Steele too, having had practice, just being a parent for 3 years, like up until the point, but when we had Juna, I had changed so many diapers before that, babysitting or nieces and nephews. And I don't think Steele had ever done that. It was just one of those sad kind of gender role things. And so by the time we had Fields, Steele had 3 years experience of being a parent and knowing what that sacrifice is. And so much of that first year of parenting for a mom, but then I think even more for a dad, like as the mom, you have the 9 months carrying the baby to get what I call broken down or broken open. Like you're getting used to like all the sacrifice and used to that it's just not all about you. And then they're born, and then you have that postpartum year where you're like you're already a year into being broken down and broken open. And that first year of baby's life, I think for the dad is their first time being broken down and broken open, where not everything is just about them, or in this case, Steele. And so for Steele, he had 3 years of being broken down and broken open by the time we had Fields. And he was much more, I would say, proactive in Fields' postpartum time. And Steele would say this too. When I was at 20 weeks pregnant with Fields, I was bleeding a lot, and we went in for my only ultrasound. I never had any ultrasounds with Juna. And we went in, and he was so scared that we were going to lose Fields. And from that moment on, he felt so connected to this little human. And I would say that's continued. Fields turned 4 on Sunday, and Steele has this little special eye and connection with Fields.
Yeah, I know you have reflected many times on being a mom, and you've shared that with me by writing beautiful text about it. Why do you think you felt you needed to do that and write down your feelings and your experience?
I think a couple things. One, just trying to wrestle a little meaning. And sometimes hardship, even though I certainly don't feel unique or alone in what it feels like to become a mom, I needed to understand what it meant for me. And so writing was a way for me to process some of the griefs. Like there's certainly things that you have to let go of, and also this whole world of possibility that opens up. And so just getting to write it down, it's like working with a therapist. I didn't know what was kind of swirling in my heart and head until I got it out on the page or in paper. And I don't even need to share it with anyone. It's for myself, or maybe it's a snapshot so that when I'm 85 and I look back and I can remember what it felt like. And I've written notes to myself for the future too. Like, hey, Nan, if and when you ever become a grandmother, here's what's really nice to have in a grandmother. Like, we have incredible parents and so much support. But I'm also just trying to remind myself, like, here's when you're a new parent or a parent of young children, what it feels so good to have a grandparent do and be like. And so I've written notes for the future, like, Nan, open when you become a grandmother. And so
That's
that you
such
don't
a sweet
forget.
idea, though.
And
Because you're right. Maybe you will forget in 10 years' time, but right now you know what you need.
yes, I know what I need now, but I think once you're distanced from it, you forget what you need. And again, I have such my mom and mother-in-law, but I have a unique experience because Robin, Steele's mom, has young kids. And so she's fresh, like she's still in it. And so there's times where she knows exactly what you need as a new parent or a parent of young kids. Where my mom is, it's been 40 years since she had a young kid. And it takes just a little more practice of, oh yeah, she knows things to do as a grandma for the kids. But sometimes I think what's interesting is that what a grandparent can do for the parents.
And did you feel like becoming a mom opened something new in your relationship with your mom? Hi, Lauren, by the way, because I know you will listen. Do you feel yeah, because I feel more connected to my mom now that I am a mom.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's so powerful and deep. With all moms, like there's just a knowing of, I see you. But with my own mom and my parents in general, you just see, like, as we're just figuring it out along the way, they were just figuring it out along the way. Like they had no plan, or they didn't know exactly what they were doing. And in the same way, we have no plan. We're just feeling our way into what feels right. And so just a lot of acceptance and forgiveness. And I wasn't holding grudges against my mom, but just, wow, like I see what you did for me and I see what you did for my siblings. And wow, how did you do that? How did you have me and then have twins? Or it's just a lot of grace. I think that's just grace and gratitude, like so much love. And another unique thing, and this is less about my mom, but you have the family of origin, so mom, dad, siblings, and this family that I came from. But then making kids with Steele, and we were creating a new family that's our nuclear family, was really empowering too, because I got to just shed some old patterns or some hurts and be building something new with my family. And that feels
so you feel like by having your own family, you can it's not the good word, but cure or repair something?
It's less about repair as much as it is, I came from this family of origin, and maybe I have all my stories and narratives and experiences from the family of origin, but now I have this whole new family, and this gets to be my focus, like getting to look forward with the family rather than having to have everything be about
you've mentioned your siblings, so you have twins, well, not you don't have a twin sister, but you have siblings that are twins, Jonna and Matt. And None of them have kids. Some it's for choice. And how do you keep your relationship with your family when they don't really know what you are experiencing? Because I feel like with my sister, it was harder at some point because I felt like she could not understand what I was going through, although she tried to understand. I'm not saying it was her fault. But how do you manage that?
Yeah, Jonna and Andrew chose not to have children, and I so support their choice. Jonna has been nothing but wonderful and really supportive and loving about me being a mom, and she's a warm and loving auntie. We don't live in the same town, so I think in a way some of that, the pressure or the sure, she doesn't know what it's like day to day to raise kids, but she lived with us. She and Andrew lived with us when Juna was like maybe 6 months to 10 months. And so she was just part of it and got to see what it takes, and she's always very flattering and loving and acknowledging. So she's an excellent auntie in that way. And then my brother and I just don't really have that relationship. He's a great uncle when he gets to see the kids and he's playful with them, but I don't expect really acknowledgement from him about what it takes to be a parent.
Makes sense. Did you find having a second child was easier or not?
Some people say like having it's so much more work when you throw a second on. I didn't find that. I felt like, all right, I'm already, like I used the words before, kind of broken in here. And I'm already used to being at home. I'm already used to cooking for other people and bedtime and all of that. So for me, having a second didn't make it more challenging. I feel like I've been able to enjoy the process so much more the second time around, just letting things go or being more relaxed about it and watching siblings interact. So for me, having a second, sure, logistically sometimes more challenging, or the days are louder and noisier and messier, but it wasn't like some people say like having a second is like having a fourth kid in your house, but that wasn't my experience.
I've mentioned it many times, but you were kind of my lighthouse in this maternity fog, because I could always ask you questions and send you emails when I was really lost, and you would be like, this is a phase, hold on to it. And I loved that you were telling me it's a phase because it just helps knowing that there is an end. And I think I've always wondered and never asked, but did you have someone like you were for me in your own motherhood? Do you have a woman you could relate to when it was hard?
Yes. A couple things. One, that phase is a friend who's like such a distant friend too. It's actually a college friend of Steele's wife sent me a note when I can't remember if I was pregnant with Juna or had just had Juna, and she sent me a text or something along this. And she was like, it's all a phase. The ups are ups and the downs are downs. And then like, you'll keep moving through. And it just became this mantra for me that really helped. So I love when people that probably don't even know how much they affected you. That, and then remind me what the second part of is there someone that has been like that for me? Yes and no. I am only learning now as I'm getting older to ask for more help and ask for what I need, and rather than just rely on my own like stoicism and just being strong. But I have a couple friends who have already been moms, and I can just go to with the venting of the like when it's really hard, and more than anything, just the empathy of like, I know it's really hard, or you hate your kids today. I hate my kids too. And you know that you both don't mean that. But it feels really good to know that you're just not alone in it. So I'd say Sarah for sure. especially for kind of birth and body, who I mentioned earlier, who owns the yoga studio, and my friend Emily Saunders, whose kids are just a little bit older. She is that person that I still feel like I can reach out to when parenting feels hard or difficult, or I'm trying to understand myself. And then it's just incredible, the web of women that I've made since becoming a mom. Like, that's something else unique that happened for me in my life was when I had Juna, I looked around and just thought, the people that I want to be in my life and in my kid's life, I really want to be healthy, supportive humans that are on an evolving path. And at that point, there were friends that I didn't break up with, but I just there was just a phasing out of them in my life. And instead, leaning towards and leaning into and reaching for especially other women that, and not all of them are mothers, but that felt like humans that I wanted to walk this path with. And now, as I look at it 7 years later, I have such strong female friendships in my life. And I'm so grateful for that when Juna came into my life, for letting go of some friendships that weren't so great and embracing and making new ones that feel so strong and so good. And that's been a huge shift in the past 7 years.
Yeah, and I think that's something you don't expect when you become a mom. You know, that's part of growing into your relationships. Yeah. I felt surprised that some friendship would end and I would find amazing new ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really unique opportunity. And speaking of like mom and dad differences, I am really encouraging of Steele to do that now in his life too. Like it's maybe this is part of matrescence, for a woman, which is we get this opportunity to develop those friendships or develop these other relationships. And it's like part of the path. Like maybe you enter grade school and you make those friends, and then you enter secondary school and you make those friends, and university and you make those friends. And maybe for a woman, it's this incredible other opportunity during this period to make friends. And men kind of don't have that same opportunity. And so I'm really encouraging of Steele right now in this point of his life to make some of those relationships or deepen ones. And so I'm only thinking of that now, that's really a unique experience of we have another little window into deepening relationships.
That's true. If you had to choose one word, or maybe 2 or 3, but to qualify what your motherhood journey has been, what do you think you would choose?
Of course, now the words are escaping me. I think the word that I would call it is dynamic. And what I mean by that is there's times where it comes really easy, and there's times where it's much harder. So it feels like a really dynamic experience that's always changing.
I like that word. Well, I think I've had all the answers I wanted, although I could keep talking about everything with you for hours, but I know you have a job, and also I'm really, really grateful that 15 years ago I got to meet you and that you've changed my life forever. So a big thank you to you. I'm going to try not to cry because every time I talk about you, I have my eyes full of water and tears. But yeah, I think my life would be very different without you in it.
Well, I'm so proud of you and love you so much. And I always think about this for myself, and certainly think about it for you too, which is, oh my gosh, I never knew that this is like, when I think back to 18-year-old Nan, this is not what 18-year-old Nan pictured for 40-year-old Nan. I don't know what I pictured, but it wasn't this. And it's kind of the same for you. So I love that life can take us in so many ways. And the most beautiful part to me about life is connection, and how connection makes it all matter. And so to have met you 15 years ago and connected, and to have you have deeply connected to yourself and Matrescence and your children and go from there is the best part of connection, that it truly does ripple out. And I love you so much too.
C'était Nan Arundel, maman de 2 enfants et mon phare dans la brume des débuts de ma maternité. Je suis Clémentine Sarlat, votre hôte. Si vous avez aimé ce podcast, n'hésitez pas à le partager sur les réseaux sociaux @la Matrescence, à laisser un commentaire, à mettre 5 étoiles. À l'année prochaine, je fais un petit break d'au moins 10 jours. Rendez-vous le 8 janvier prochain.